Higher definition.
I've been searching for more. When will I find it? When will I see it? What will I do? When will I know? Higher, take me higher. There's gotta be more. Gotta be more. There's gotta be more. I need a higher definition than what it seems. There's gotta be more. Gotta be more.
Come on and take me higher, yeah. There's gotta be more. There's gotta be more. I wanna know beyond all the rules and even past the school. I wanna know more, yeah, yeah, yeah.
I need a higher definition.
Higher definition.
I've been searching for more. When will I find it? When will I see it? What will I do? When will I know? Higher, take me higher. There's gotta be more. Gotta be more. There's gotta be more. I need a higher definition than what it seems. There's gotta be more. Gotta be more.
Good evening. Welcome to Higher Definition Radio, where our goal is to take you higher, celebrating year 16. And every time I hear that song, actually our song that we used at the radio station for about 10 years, there is a longer version of that song. Somewhere out here floating, I just can't locate our whole version of that song. But that song was actually, or theme was actually made for the show. And it's performed by Jamie Brown. And for people that are not familiar with his music, he's very, very talented. And he has done this mega church behind the scenes music guy. And he's a pretty big deal in the music thing. So I'm glad we were able to get him when he was the unknown Jamie Brown, because I'm sure it'll be a lot different now to try to get him to redo that. I want to welcome everyone. I want to say good evening. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for supporting us for all this time. And it's always great for me to have men on. Every did a wonderful job leading the show last week. That a lot of people, when you start talking about forgiveness, and I want to touch on that a little bit with our masculinity tonight. We have a tough time with forgiving and letting go. And one of the topics that came up, and I just want to bring this up now, is about taking communion. We talked about this during the week, and it was a part of the conversation during the show. If your heart is not right, or you're troubled, you're supposed to abstain from communion. And that conversation has kind of taken a life of its own this week. So I do want to bring that up at some point with men and hearing your position on it. But first, our executive producer, T, who gives directions all week. And I know his family members going to be watching, so he'll say something slick. So I just want to say good evening, T. How has your week been? And how are you, sir?
Good evening, sir. Good evening. I don't have anything bad to say about trucking this week. I don't have anything bad to say about trucking this week. In lieu of we doing a show on men and masculinity. The most masculine black movie character. I'm wearing a T-shirt with a guy. I think in the movies he don't have any other facial expression, but straight masculine. But no, I had a great week, man. Everything's good. I'm excited to do the show. I haven't met the other two gentlemen yet. It was good on the pre-show, kind of just talking to them. Maybe after the show we talk a little bit more.
Yeah, if you wouldn't have slid in like Eddie Kane Jr., like always, man, we had time for all that. But, you know, it is what it is. So thank you, T, for gracing us with your presence, sir. And just thank your mom, let me put it this way, your family must not be watching this week. Last couple weeks ago when you was on, it was, you know, God this, God that, you know, now you got an Ice Cube t-shirt on. We just got a lot going on.
Did you let the gentleman know that me and you don't agree on anything?
We figured that out in the pre-show.
Oh yeah.
Every time on the show, me and Lamont don't agree on anything.
Mr. Daniel, how are you, sir?
Oh man, I'm doing great.
How's business?
Man, business is going good. Kind of a slow time now. It's always slow after Christmas. But it's gonna pick back up. God has been blessing. Ministry doing great. Bible study on Tuesday has been great. So God has just been doing what God do.
Very happy to say it again, T.
What kind of business?
I do have a what do you call it, home theater business. I mount TVs, running wires, cables, anything, home improvement, electronic wise. I got you.
And I'm sure your wife is probably watching. If she'll put the name of your business and contact information, it'll be great. And I know you didn't want to say it, but I'll go ahead and say it. It usually falls off after Christmas until tax season hit, and we are upon tax season, so we are sure it will pick back up.
Yes.
Al, how are you, sir?
I'm good, man.
How have you been overall?
I'm sitting here talking to you, so that must mean I'm doing good.
I like the whole look at T. Look, I like how you said that, sir.
Right. Yeah.
Mr. Abel, sir, how are you?
Man, it's doing good, man, till the heat went out on us. So, man, won't get here till tomorrow. But we'll be all right.
Okay, all right. Yeah, lucky that didn't happen 2 weeks ago. You've been in the world.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We staying in the hotel.
You would have to. Again, I want to welcome everyone for this show. And the show title is Unpacking Masculinity. And for the people who don't watch us or kind of pop in and out, we kind of split just different show topics. Like Tia have her own topic, Everett have this. This one's actually one of Marlon's topics. So it'll have Marlon's overall outline, but my twist to it. And so it'll be a little different probably the way Marlon would have ran this, as everyone probably knows. Want to start off the gate because T, we shot videos maybe 2 years ago talking about this very thing, masculinity and unpacking it. And men being in touch with their masculinity. When you think about masculinity, what comes to mind?
You said T.
T.
You know, growing up, for sure, that was one thing, you know, like, and I got an uncle, my uncle that I think about when I think of masculinity, he's the first thing I think about. My uncle was the toughest guy I knew. He played football in high school, and all of his friends still tell stories about him being strong and physical and body slamming people. And so, you know, that's the first thing you think of from that aspect, the way I was raised. I think it's been documented. People kind of know on the show. I think I'm a guy that's always trying to evolve in different ways. And for me now, thinking about that, I kind of want to change the definition of that because I have a 10-year-old son too. And I don't think that particularly played out well in my life, viewing that as the only source of masculinity. You know, for me, it's so many different things. And I know you probably have a lot of questions, but I even think about being raised. The first thing I thought of, like a man being, when men say they're the head of household and they want their wives to submit to them. And I think young men and even a lot of men got the wrong sense of that. It's like, I tell people what to do. And the more I've evolved and started reading and studying, and I realized that means something totally different. Like the man of the household means like you're responsible for everything that goes on in here. That means like if your daughter and your wife aren't getting along, you don't just let that go and just be like, well, they're not getting along. You got to get in there. So I might be veering a little left, but I'm making a point that things of that nature, masculinity and things of that nature, they just kind of start meaning different things to me now. And it's more than just like how strong I am. Can I fight? If somebody break in my house, will I shoot them? Those are the first things that come to my mind because that's the way I was raised. But I'm trying to evolve to something, and that's a great question. I really don't have the exact answer for that. What do I want masculinity to mean? But I do know I need it to be more than just those surface level things for me.
And I'll go to Al next. So you see masculinity probably displayed in a different way, being in law enforcement. What comes to your mind when you hear masculinity, Al?
To me, masculinity is a concept, not an actual factual thing. When I say concept, it's what society thinks a man's supposed to be. It's what society thinks of how a man's supposed to act, and it's what we were taught as little kids. You're supposed to not cry. You're supposed to really not have any feelings. You're supposed to be tough. All of that stuff is a concept. It's not a natural thing in human nature to constantly be that way. That's just something that is taught to us. You can't tell me a child that's born is born masculine. That's something that they learn through the environment that they come in. So it's a concept. It's an idea. It's what society says it is. That's what masculinity is to me.
Fred, what are your thoughts when you hear masculinity? This is the thought of being a masculine man.
It's like Al said, I think it's more of a what you're saying is an example. As my example, I saw my dad growing up. My dad's masculine man, he went to work every day. And something was broke, he wasn't calling the handyman to fix it, he was gonna try to fix it. And he was gonna protect us. Whatever we needed, he was gonna make sure he's gonna go out and get it for us. So he was that man that we looked up to for whatever we needed. Now, growing up, you wouldn't go catch that crying because I'm assuming he was taught, he was learning that, like Al said, a man don't cry. So, you were going to catch him crying. Now, as he got up in age, you may see that more because things have changed. But masculinity is something you taught. Like I said, you didn't come out the womb saying, hey, I'm a masculine man, your chest poked out. If you didn't have a man around, a father, uncle, cousin, somebody like that to show you what it meant to be a man, then your masculinity may not be as big as the next person's. So I think it's something somebody has taught you, something you've seen.
Mr. Abel, military guy, guy that grew up, wrestling, tough. What does masculinity mean to you?
Well, I agree with everybody. I think it's cultural. And the culture kind of dictates what is and what is not masculine. Every time we have shows like this, I like to point out the fact that there are cultures where men kiss each other on the cheek, and some cultures men kiss each other on the lips. There are some cultures where men hold hands, walk down the street. I mean, they arms swinging, holding hands. So and there are cultures where men cry harder than women, and they're expected to show that type of emotion, and that's what men are supposed to do. And so I guess it's just for me, I think that the man is in a leadership position, and all leaders should be willing to do the hard things. That's something like what T was talking about with some of the hard conversations that nobody else wants to have, making the hard decisions that nobody else wants to make, doing the hard thing that nobody else wants to do. Like you're the person who's ultimately responsible, and you got to make it happen no matter what.
No, I want to thank you guys for all those answers as we get started. And I think 2 or 3 people mentioned men crying. And it's one of those actually taboo things sometimes about crying. And I want to ask our audience, is it okay for men to cry? And I know on the surface, everyone is going to say yes. It's okay. Men should cry. But I want to point out from an early age, even the way I grew up, you don't cry before I give you something to cry about. That's the way most, and I can't speak for every culture in America, but most African American men have grown up with that moniker of don't cry before I give you something to cry about. One of the shortest passages in the Bible is John 11:35. Jesus wept. And if you know that story of him weeping, it wasn't because Lazarus was dead. He cried because he was caught in the emotions with his friends, his disciples, that they had so much emotion that he showed so much compassion that he wept also. Fred, why do you think we struggle with this crying as men?
Because like you said before, growing up, we was taught you don't cry. You know, if you're on your bicycle and you fall, you scrape your knee, it may hurt. You're going to try to hold that thing in because you ain't going to want nobody to see you crying. Now, if you out there by yourself, you're going to boo-hoo crying, but you ain't going to want nobody to see you crying. And then don't go in the house and you do something and you just cry. Your daddy said, you can't do this. Your mom said, you can't do this. And you start crying. Oh, you about to, like myself, you about to really have something to cry about. So daddy tell me, let me give you something to cry about since you want to cry. So before daddy got to you, try to suck that thing in and hold it. Because you didn't want to let it out because that's what they told you. And then don't say you in high school and you find this female y'all dating and you start crying in front of it's over.
Nah, man. Nah.
It's over. You about to be single at that point. It's just so society has taught us as black men that we don't cry. We got to be tough. We don't cry. But like I told my dad, once you get a little older, things hit you a little different. So you might shed a tear, but I guarantee a lot of those tears we share, we're gonna share it in private. We ain't gonna share it in the open. And I think that's one of the problems we have. We don't want to share that stuff in the open. So now you're suppressing all those feelings and those emotions. So when are you gonna let them out?
And I want to thank Rita for watching. She definitely, we have these conversations, and her husband was on. We've had conversations about emotional men and being a man. And sometimes it's tough, right? That we put these high standards on people. And then Al, I'm gonna go to you because you probably see crying in a different way in law enforcement. I'm sure there's some tough scenes you go to, or people in hardship situations, kids getting arrested, or people in prison. Talk about your experience with crying in the law enforcement background and anything else you want to talk about around that.
Well, first I want to say this. First time my kids ever saw me cry was when my oldest daughter graduated from high school. And they teased me about it because they've never seen me cry. And you got to look at it this way. Especially in the job that I do, I go to some horrific scenes, absolutely horrific scenes. And what happens if I start crying? You can make a situation worse. Or hey, for us military guys, when you're in combat or you're in a situation where you know you might get hurt, you know you might get killed, or you lost somebody, and you start crying, what happens? You break down the mission because people look at you as that tough person. The same thing in law enforcement. When you come on scene, they're looking at you as this tough person with this, comforting, hey, things are safer now. The children, when you go into a house where a child is abused, and that's some of the most horrific things that you see. And if you start crying, even though you're emotional, that kid is going to not look at you as a savior. It's going to look at you as, hey, this person's not going to help me. There's a time and a place for it. But growing up, we all, like my cousin here said, we all were taught. You fall off that bike and you scrape if you go in the house crying, what you think gonna happen to you? Come on now. You get into a fight and you lose the fight and you come home and you doing what your daddy gonna tell you? Well, if you don't stop that darn crying and get back out there and all that kind of stuff. It's there's a time and a place for it. But I think it's more acceptable now than it was back when we were all little too.
It is.
It's more acceptable. And y'all know why. So I'm leave that alone.
And Everett is someone I served with, someone I went to high school with. For a lot of people know, just time to time you will see me post memorial to Mickey's on, and you'll see that on my page. His mom has been following the people he served with. He died in combat, but he was a part of a unit that I was in where Eric Carro died in Pelham Range, Alabama. He died on a jump that a lot of us witnessed. From the military standpoint, if someone dies on a jump within 24 hours, everyone in that unit got to get back in the air and jump again.
Yep, jump again.
They don't want those emotions to come out. And I get it. So when you're talking about time and place, that's a time and place where you need the emotions to be under control so fear doesn't set in. And I know it's probably psychology behind that. But Everett, in your experience, I know you've worked in the prison system, a wrestler, military. Like, has it been acceptable to see people crying after a loss in a wrestling match where, you know, this is like old school combat? You know, is that acceptable at any time for men to cry?
Man, I mean, you was around some people recently who were laughing about me crying after that.
That's why I asked you the question.
Yeah, of course, right. So that's my thing, man. Like losing, I don't even like losing in checkers. You know what I'm saying? And I don't even play spades and Uno, like none of that stuff. So, but we were talking about. I mean, this ain't really about crime, but just when we was talking about things, I remember, you know, when I was in the military, we were on the jump too, and the plane had an electrical fire on it. And I just remember looking at a certain person who was in a position of authority, and they looked scared, and that made me scared.
Mm-hmm.
To this point where I'm still scared of being on an airplane, even though I was airborne. I jumped, been on planes a lot of times, but still, like now being in the air, like I gotta take that pill and go be like Mr. T, just go to sleep on it. And but when somebody who's in charge kind of loses control, and I don't want to say he lost control, but when you are an authority figure, like your part of your responsibility is to make sure that everybody else is calm and they know it's going to be all right. And you might suffer, but because of that, you know, like we're not dealing with our mental health issues, we're not expressing ourselves emotionally. But I just feel like as a man, when everything going wrong, I gotta keep it together, and so that somebody will have a clear head and be able to make decisions and let everybody else, you know, do whatever they're gonna do. But I need to be the one with the clear head. Again, that might not be the healthiest way of looking at it, but that's just how I see it.
No, and man, I'll say this because you brought up the story at the beginning. For the people I grew up around who were known to cry, I still remember every one of their names. I've never forgotten that, hey, they called such and such crybaby, or this person was susceptible to crying at anything. And, you know, that's like a psyche thing that I think we carry around. Go ahead, Eric.
No, because I did want to make another point. You brought that up that made me think about it, is that like that's one of them things that, like, when you grow up and like I said, you get picked on for crying, you realize that crying is not gonna work. It's not gonna, like, ain't nobody gonna let you off the hook because you crying, especially if you're a boy. It's probably gonna get worse. You experience loss, you lose loved ones, people disappoint you in life, and you just build up those calluses, and you just get kind of hardened, and you're not as in touch with your emotions as you were. And that's one of the things I actually pray about. Like I pray to God, just help me care more, you know, help me feel more. There are things that's going on in the world, things going on in life, it should hurt more. You know what I'm saying? And I'm concerned that I don't feel pain the way I should be feeling. You know what I'm saying?
No, that's deep. And when we get back to the second question, my second part of this question we'll go to. I saved T for last because I know T, we've talked about this multiple times. We're at my house talking about this very topic. T, what are your thoughts on men and crying and showing those types of emotion?
Yeah, I got a lot to say about this issue. I think first, starting off with what Al said, and I think that was very apropos, that there is a time and a place, right? I think that if you're the person that goes to tell families they lost a loved one, or you're a police officer that tells that it's in the job description sometimes. And I think that's a little bit, different. That's outside the box, and that's in a different lane. I think that's just what it is. That's just the way it's going to be. I think the problem is that there's a time and place for it. The only thing is, when we were kids, the time and place we were taught was never. That's the problem. There's a time and a place, except we was taught that it's never okay. I think about there's some examples, some popular examples that came to mind as you guys were talking, that I heard men cry, and it was so it was visceral to look at. And after I thought about it, I remember when Aaliyah died on the plane, and DMX called in the 106 in Park and just burst into tears. And I was kind of taken aback. First of all, DMX. But I realized that he's in those moments, I feel like that person's in touch with something that maybe all of us are not in touch with. I think about an episode of The Fresh Prince that everybody remember, when his dad came and left him, and he broke down in tears, and Uncle Phil just hugged him. And this is powerful moments. Like, this is real life. Like, in those moments, I think we got to stop thinking about what it looked like and what it feels. That big grown man hugged that big grown young man in that moment. And some of us can't do it because of shortcomings from where we was raised. I think we got to look in the mirror. I think we got to think about what we teach our children. Of course, in the core of me, is always going to be a time and a place. I have a son. I don't want him crying all the time, but we can't teach him that the answer is never, right? There was a Duke and Louisville basketball game years ago in the tournament. The Louisville player fell and broke his leg through his skin, and all the players on both teams start throwing up and crying. And lastly, how it affects me personally, that I've kind of had this conversation with myself my whole life. I just sucked these things in and didn't let them out because that's what I was taught, like every other guy said. But, about 10 to 15 years ago, I started going on a personal journey with myself of thinking, what do you think about life? Not what was put in you as a plant. And there were some of those things that I agree with my parents and my church. And there were some things that I said, nah, I don't agree. And crying about certain things is one of them. I'll give you guys 3 examples. When I watched the documentary for the Central Park 5, I cried like a baby, man. I cried like a baby to see these young men unjustly have to go through that. I'm not gonna tell that one because I ain't comfortable telling that one. But I finished. You know what I'm saying? But I finished. But sometimes to this day, I'm driving down the street. One of my best friends about 15 years ago, he died on a motorcycle, and I'll just be driving down the street and I'll think of him and I'll burst into tears. And I've come to think of that as not problematic, but more therapeutic. And being that I made this transition in this specific lane, I feel like I'm a better man for it.
No, and that's powerful.
Can I follow up with what he
Please.
said just now?
Please.
100%, brother. I agree with you 100%. And I said earlier that as you notice that these young people, or these people nowadays, are this society or this generation, or the last 2 generations, you notice that they cry more now than we did. Just imagine back when, I don't know how old you are, but I know back when I was a kid, had I been on that basketball court and that kid broke his leg and I started crying, somebody would have said something to me. You know what I'm saying? But they don't do that anymore. they allow these kids to be as emotional as they want to be. You got football players when the one football player heart stopped beating, they want to feel crying. Think about that in the 70s. Would you have seen somebody on the football field crying? So yeah, things have definitely changed, and a lot of it has to do with that lineage of men has died off. And so you have a younger generation, or I call myself the younger generation, growing up, not teaching our sons and our daughters to show emotions, because we all know what happens if they keep this stuff bottled up. Some of us are the products of that. So I agree. I just want to say I agree with you 100%. And I went a long way around saying that, but I want to tell you I agree with you 100% on what you said.
No, and everyone has touched on something about the acceptance of crying and non-acceptance. And I think of examples like, man, all of us ain't paid our bills on time all our life. And that stress can get to you like no other. You want to talk about stress? Thinking about keeping the lights on, how we going to eat, how we going to clothe. And we have the examples in the Bible where Jesus himself, as Christian believers, wept openly. And I gave the example when Lazarus, Jesus knew he was going to raise him. He told his disciples he was going to raise him. He was so overcome with emotion, seeing other people crying, that he could cry. Like, I don't know many men, and Al gave the example of football game. Like, I don't know many men that would see another man cry and just start walking up and just crying, of our generation, around this generation, maybe this younger generation. Jesus cried openly on the cross, but he wasn't crying for himself. He was crying for us to be forgiven. Where do you think we're going wrong with this, Fred? Because we have the example, but the counter is our upbringing where, hey, you better shut up. You better be quiet. But then in the same breath, I'm not blaming women. Women will say men need to be more emotional when they become husbands or become boyfriends or fathers, that, you know, you can't be this tough. You need to open up and tell your whole life. What do you think we're going wrong with this?
Well, like I said, it falls back to upbringing. If you didn't see it growing up, then you're not going to automatically overnight almost start crying. And yeah, a lot of women say they want to see that emotional side. But if something go wrong, you start crying, they go look at you like, why are you crying? Why are you trying to fix it? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? So it's kind of like a two-edged sword. Like, you want to see my emotion, but you want me to fix it too. So I think what we got to do is just like my kids. My son, oh boy, he'll cry for a drop of a dime. You know, he said he wants some water. You say no, he go cry. And so I'd be like, shut up. Ain't nothing wrong with you. Sometimes my wife be like, you know, don't tell her, let him cry, let her let it out till she get to a point that she don't want to hear it no more. But I think we have to stop telling young men and little boys not to cry. Or if they are crying, figure out why they're crying and stop saying don't do it. Because if you say don't do it at 15, when they hit 25 and have an issue, then they ain't gonna cry. They're gonna hold it in. So we have to figure out why they're crying and talk to them and help them kind of release whatever they have pinned up on the inside of them. Because basically that's what happened to us growing up. We weren't able to release what we had pent upside in us. So what we did was either went out and did something crazy, or just continue to hold on to it till somebody really did something that we blew up. So we got to basically talk to these young men and figure out, okay, what the issue is before you cry, or you feeling emotional. You know, what's going on? Let me talk to you, try to help you walk through it. Instead of saying, don't cry, be a man.
And Everett, I'll ask you the same. I've given examples in the Bible. Why do you think we still struggle with it? We have the example. The example is there, right? Why do you think we're still struggling with this? Especially as adults. Why do you think we're struggling?
Man, I was talking to some guys about this this evening, and basically I was talking about sin, but it's I guess the same concept apply, that, you know, the more you do something, the harder it is to stop doing it. You know, it's just inertia. Like you've been, you know, in this state for so long, like you don't really know how to exist otherwise. You know, but I think like I met a couple of grown men in my life who cry, like drop a hat, anything, and not, and I don't think no less of them. Be honest with you, I admire them. Like I wish I could, and again, not that I want to be walking around crying all the time, but like I said before earlier, like there's certain situations where things happen. I was like, I should feel that more than I do. You know what I'm saying? And I think over time, I let the fear of crying, fear of getting picked on, and then trying to protect myself from, again, just some of the losses you experience in life, a lot of the disappointments you experience in life. You kind of guard yourself, and you just you put that armor around where you try not to let nothing touch you like that, to where you can be moved to those types of emotions. But I just admire men who haven't let the world beat that out of them. Like they still that what they're supposed to be. Like they're a whole person. I always talk about, man, we have these conversations all the time, and I say the same thing, but it still mean, it's still true. But that speech for Jim Valvano when he was at the ESPY Awards, he's talking about 3 things you need to do to have a good day. You need to laugh, you need to think, you need to cry. And I laugh a lot, I think all the time, but like there's a third part of my day I'm missing.
No, that's deep. Al, do you think we've become numb to being in touch with our emotions from, I say, our generation?
No. I think that we are starting to understand the importance of being able to express our emotions, especially to those who love us, our spouses. And the older we get, I think the more we understand that. But when we're talking about these young men, especially young African American men, we got to talk about 2 things that we haven't spoke about yet. One of them is testosterone. The other one is who's raising these boys. Remember, we all said on here that we were told growing up by men, don't cry, don't cry, don't cry. But who's raising these boys now? Are they being raised by their fathers or being raised by their mothers? Is the mother going to tell your son, don't cry? I doubt it. I doubt she's going to say, you don't need to be out there in society crying. I'm not knocking it. I'm just saying that to me, it seems like they are more emotional now than they were as we were growing up. A prime example is look at how they react when they are challenged. They are emotional beings. They want to fight. They want to shoot. And trust me, I see enough of that. I can tell you with the 100% certainty that that's going on. But as far as I don't want to just I don't want to just say the crying part. I want to say the whole being a man part. What is society telling these young men what a man is? Where are they getting their examples from? Who are they looking up to tell them this is what a man's supposed to do, this is what a man is not supposed to do? Who's teaching them how to be a man? Is the internet or music or video games or streets telling them, or is there somebody in their family like we had, those of us who were fortunate to have fathers in our lives telling you what a man's supposed to be? And is like everything else in society, those times have changed. So even if you do have a father in your life, what is that father teaching you about manhood?
I'm gonna be a transparent moment. Don't judge me, but I know y'all are, because y'all some judgmental folks. So we had communion today, and at the end, blessed be the tide where you hold hands, and there was an older gentleman next to me on one side and a younger on the other. And the younger guy reached out his hand right away. Me and the older gentleman, we had to look at each other for a second. And then we reached out our hand. I know y'all gonna say in the church environment, come on, that kind of stuff don't happen. But y'all know, y'all probably just won't be transparent at this moment about, even physical contact within men is a little off sometimes. Like a lot of us didn't grow up just blatantly hugging each other or walking around holding hands. Have we become numb to expressing our emotions?
I don't necessarily think we become numb. I think we have never known how to do it. It's just something that we're not good at. And I'm glad Everett brought that up about the Jim Valvano, because I wanted to bring it up before. That, of course, if we're old enough, everybody kind of remembers that speech. And what an amazing speech, man. That I think that was one of the first times that I realized that being emotional was okay given the circumstance. Like, this man was dying and he was telling the world how he felt. And I realized, like, man, that's okay. That was okay. And of course, that moment goes down in history. I think part of it is we're never taught or even think about, what they call emotional intelligence. Let's say when you guys talked about women want men to be, I don't necessarily know they want men to be emotional. It sounds like women want men to have some level of emotional intelligence. Unfortunately for us, we come from a time period where that was never a topic discussed, to the negative, all bad. I think when things that you care about, you will get emotional about. And I think everybody's different. I think the issue is it's okay not to be emotional and cry. That's fine too. If you're the person that doesn't cry, that's fine. That's who you are. I think the problem is we shun the person who does cry. We make them feel bad or whatever. I think if you put a lot of effort into wrestling or basketball and you make it to the pinnacle, to the state championship, and you lose, I think it's okay to cry. You care. I think if your wife leaves you, I think that's something to cry about. Like, you're hurt. You're hurting on the inside. Again, I think we have to make a distinction that there's nothing wrong with the guy who doesn't cry. If he doesn't, it's also nothing wrong with the person who cries. When you're in church and you have a visceral reaction to something, it's an altar call. And, even in that moment, I think, Lamont, you brought up a great point about, I think all men or most men I know, that moment when we have to hold hands, there's something that ticks in your brain, like, and you got to kind of overcome and be like, but like, what is that? It is funny, right? But like, that's a real problem too. Like, we're in the house of the Lord. We're called to hold hands in this moment. That's a problem. I wrote down here too. I think what Al said that I remember. He said, I think too, sometimes we get so caught up in being emotional, we get stuck on crying. Crying is not the end all, the be all of emotion or showing emotion. I think Al made that point, and I agree with that. That a big part about it being emotional, I think what I'm gonna teach my son is being able to communicate how you're feeling. That can be showing emotions as well too. Hey, I'm disappointed. It don't mean that everybody in that moment cries. Hey, I'm hurting. You can say, hey, you're going through something with your girlfriend, your wife, your friend. Hey, man, that hurt me. That really bothers me that you handled that like that. I've told this story on here before. I'll put this in summary. Too, I've seen when I was doing physical therapy in my life, and it's really cultural, which is something Everett touched on earlier. I've seen some of my Caucasian clients do some things with their family that just kind of blew my mind. Like, and they don't think anything of it. They don't think anything of it. The two examples I give, does everybody remember? Does everybody on here have children except for Everett? Or I think the question I would ask, if you remember that episode with the Fresh Prince and Uncle Phil, what would you do in that moment? Like, he held him. That could have been his daughter or his son. And I think that's I sometimes just go back and watch that scene because I think that probably should be something taught in class. That was a moment when you got to let go of all those things you was taught and them indiscretions you have, and your child, your son, what he need from you in that moment. He needs you to wrap his hands around it. I ain't talking about no bro hug either. He needed you to wrap his arms around him and embrace him. I think we got to do more of that. The story that I told on him before was my uncle at the end of his life, or toward the end of his life, and I was helping give care for him, and he was hurting, and the only thing that was making him feel better is like kind of like rubbing on his kidneys a little bit. And to this day, I pray for God to let me to let go some of these indiscretions. I did it, but I felt some sort of way about it, like rubbing on his side where his kidneys was, and I felt so. After that, I felt so ashamed. I shouldn't be, because it's just what I was taught. It's just what I was taught. But that was another thing in my mind. I said, hey, I got to let some of this stuff go, man. Some of this stuff, my uncle is dying, and I'm thinking about something I said before the show. I'm sitting here thinking about some dumb stuff that this man want me to rub on his kidneys to feel better. And I kind of close with that. That's just my thoughts.
The first time I went out in the Ville in Korea, when I was stationed in Korea, I saw two Korean men walking down the street holding hands. And you know, the first thing that came to my mind, oh, they gay. There's a bunch of gay people walking around here. And we had these Korean workers called Katusas. They were augmented into the U.S. Army that worked with us. And we were on patrol. And I said, why do they do that? He said, it's a show of affection. He said, it's normal here. It's a show of affection. Men hold hands and women hold hands. So a lot of it's cultural also.
Yeah. And I know we have a lot of women commenting tonight. And I would love to hear the answer to this question. So kind of a Lamont Rashford specialty. So if you men that's on the show, and I would love to hear the women, married or not, answers to this also. If you're on your first or second date and you went to the movies or at home watching a movie and your man cried, would you accept it or not? And I'm gonna start with you, Fred. Do you think you would be accepted crying on the first or second date of a relationship if you were watching a movie?
With my wife now, yeah, she would. Now, other people I dated before that, probably not. All depending on who it was. With my wife, yeah, she would. But like I say, it depends. It's all depending on the person and how you know that person, how y'all met, how y'all talked before, or you just met her online, y'all went out. But it's gonna depend on the person you're going out with.
T, accepted crying on watching, man, it might be Lassie or something, or and you turned your camera again. It could be Bambi, get shot. You gonna be accepted?
I think this is going to be hard for all the men to kind of speak on this, because you're kind of asking us to put ourselves in the other gender's shoe, but I don't think it would be as accepted. I really don't. I'm gonna be honest. I think that might be a little too early, and it probably depends on the movie too, right? Like, I think if you go see the George Floyd documentary and they show the scene up there, she's a black woman. I think she probably she might could get with that. I guess I would say that might be a little too early to be going to see something so heavy.
Right.
Right there.
Yeah, I'm glad you said it. I ain't gotta say it.
So no romantic shows, no romantic movies.
We need to stay in the Friday / white girls or something like that. We need to keep this light. You know what I'm saying? We need to keep this light. Yeah, that's a good question. I love to see some of the ladies' response. Also, I think you are what you attract mostly. I think the women I've dated didn't have a problem with it so much, but I think I have been very transparent in my journey to my evolution. I think when I meet people now, I talk to them early on about some of the struggles of growing up young black man and not being able to express ourselves, not being able to show emotion, and quite frankly, struggling with it my whole life, and saying I want to change that narrative. Once again, something Al said, I do think that let's be clear here. There's a time and a place, like that doesn't mean, and I think Freddie said earlier too, like he gets on his son. Where do you draw the line? I don't know. I'm not a therapist. Son, you can't cry about everything. Like, if you cry about everything, what's the time and the place? You know, and Fred, that's funny you say that. I have a 10-year-old son. He's the same way. You know, and so I straddle that line between trying not to be what I was raised, but also knowing that you can't cry because I say you can't drink the whole bottle of water. I mean, come on. Right. So that's a slippery slope.
So Everett, first, second date, it's acceptable crying. And let me give an example of a movie. I'm trying to think the name of it. I think it's I Can Do It Bad by Myself. I might be wrong. It's one of the Tyler Perry movies where Janet Jackson's husband gets killed or something after they and argued. You know, it's a pretty sad part of the scene. Like, you gonna be accepted crying or?
See, I'm with T, man. Like, first date, you gotta figure out, you know, you got to, you know, pick something more appropriate. Like, we're not watching Titanic, Terms of Endearment. Like, you know, we don't need to see all that on first date. You know, wait till we get to know each other. Yeah, just I think a lot of us are kind of talking about the same thing, but it ain't just crying. It's emotions in general. And I believe, men, we need to be able to control our emotions to a point. And a good point, a good example of that is, you know, somebody breaking your house, like, you can't be crying. You know what I'm saying? Like, you got to do something, but
you're scared,
crying, huh?
But
crying,
when you're scared, some people's emotion is to cry. Okay, for definitely women.
Okay, somebody breaking your house, you start crying, y'all make it through it. She ain't gonna look at you saying no more, dog. It ain't gonna work out, probably. You know.
I've been the most sentimental guy on this panel, but Everett's right about this one.
You're right.
This is a time for action, man. This is a time for action.
You can cry later.
Wait a minute. Let me go to Al. Al, come on now. Like, a real scary, intense situation at the house. You mean the man can't cry to, you know, to walk his way through it?
Nah, bro. Nah. No, you need to focus. Matter of fact, you should be too focused to cry. All those emotions will come out later. In 2018, I had an officer involved shooting. And I know that's different than somebody coming into the house.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, I had to shoot and kill somebody. And I had seconds to make a decision whether I was going to do this. And after everything was over, I was a supervisor, so I couldn't stop being a supervisor because I shot this man. I set up my perimeter. I got investigators on the way, called the sheriff, had all that stuff done. When all that was done, I picked up my phone and I called my wife. And I'm going to tell you, the moment I heard my wife say hello, I cried. I had to turn my body camera off because I didn't want nobody else to hear me crying. But I cried to my wife, told her what happened, told her that I would call her as soon as I got an opportunity to, told her I loved her, got off the phone with her. The moment I hung that phone up, I stopped crying. There's a time and place for it. Somebody breaking in your house ain't the time to be crying. It's the time you can cry. You got plenty of time to cry afterwards. But you got tears in your eyes, you can't shoot.
And I do think that there are times where you got to do something physical, crying. I've seen several times before a fight, the person that was crying before the fight beat the wheels off the other person. But that's a different lane than the door got kicked in and you got to focus. That's a little different lane. It ain't time. Because when you're crying, you are emotional. I think we all have to agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
At that moment, it ain't time to be so emotional. You have to focus. Now, fighting, sometimes, you know, heavy emotion can help you. You're mad, you're crying, but like with some stuff, you got to focus. You got somebody shooting at you, or let's even get more specific with a break-in. To Al's point, he was in duty, but whether somebody breaking in or not, somebody shooting a gun at you. That ain't the time to cry. Can you imagine getting shot at? You just no. You better either be running somewhere or exchanging fire.
Yeah, I mean this right here. I mean, what we're talking about now is is an emotional response to a stressful situation, which is totally different than what we're talking about as far as
Exactly.
emotions. But it was
Exactly.
a good question. It's a good question. You know, you don't have no time. Yeah, when you're in a stressful situation, you don't have time to be worried about crying. As a matter of fact, time goes so slow and things are so focused. You don't have time for it. I can tell you I had another shooting. I know I had some bad luck.
I ain't even gonna say, man, I know what's going on, but
Right.
I don't want to go there with you.
In 2013, let me tell you how the body works. In 2013, I had another shooting. Young man decided he didn't want to go back to jail, so he ran into a shed, pulled a gun, turned around, and pulled the trigger on me. But the gun jammed. Got into a gunfight with him, but he ended up killing himself.
Mm.
His truck was parked right next to my patrol truck, and as a matter of fact, my patrol truck hit his. And when backup got there, they took me up the hill and sat me on the back of the truck. I must have been about 40 yards away from where it all happened, and I hear this music. I mean, the music was extremely loud, like somebody was playing. Somebody was playing rap music, and I'm like mad. I'm like, what officer would show up to this shooting playing this kind of music? They said, Al, that's the suspect's vehicle. So let me tell you, I'm right next to the suspect vehicle. The music is absolutely blasting. He had a bass amp in there, but I heard that gun 40 feet away from me, dry fire. I never heard that music. And it was right there next to my head. So the body itself will do what it needs to do to make you focus. So yeah, in a stressful situation like a house break-in, hopefully your body will react that way. If you cower in the corner, you ain't gonna make it out.
Al, I think the most important part of your story was, which is funny, you talked about your first story is that you didn't show emotion in the moment and you kept your supervisor hat on. That was the most important part, the way you told the story. But I think the most important part was your humanity once you called your wife.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was, for me, that was the more what I locked into more.
That was the hardest part about the whole thing. That was the hardest. Believe it or not. Listen, I've been doing this job for a very, very long time, and there are risks that come with the job. I accepted those risks. So the shooting part, the initial part of it was not my concern. My concern at the time was getting on that phone and talking to my wife. Because remember, I'm not the only one in this job. She's in this job with me. Because when I walk out the house at night or in the daytime whenever I'm going to work, it could be the last time that she ever talks to me. So, and she had been with me through the first one. So I wanted to make sure I contacted her. Once I contacted her, I got that crying out. I got back to my job. I felt really bad about this young man. I felt really, really bad that it came to this. But you remember, he chose that action. It wasn't my choice to put myself into that. He did. So you learn to deal with those emotions. I had to go through counseling. It wasn't like it's just, oh man, yeah, everything's cool. I'm good with this, or whatever. Nah, man, that it'll mess you up. It absolutely mess you up. And I know we're a little off topic, but I went through counseling. The first time I didn't go through counseling, it almost destroyed me. It almost not only destroyed me, but it almost destroyed my marriage. Because you know why? It's the same thing we're talking about right now. The same exact thing we're talking about right now. You don't want to be labeled as the guy who's soft or want to cry or want to be a punk. I'm having some emotional problems. No, and especially when you're working with a bunch of alpha males, they all looking at you like, looking for that weakness. So you don't want to show that weakness. Going to a counselor is a weakness. But until I realized that I was destroying not only myself, but my marriage and my children, I had to get out of that. I had to get out of that masculinity. I had to get out of that manhood. I had to get out of that stuff that we were all talking about right now about, I'm tough and I'm good with it. And I went and got help. And that's what saved, and I mean this, that saved my life. It absolutely saved my life. So when the second one happened, although it was an emotional event, And yeah, talking to my wife was extremely emotional. I was smart enough because I had gone through it to go ahead and go through counseling and not even let it get to that point.
Let me say this. First of all, thanks for all the great comments that are coming in. I see John Simpson is watching. I see a lot of people who are really commenting on what we're discussing, and it's good to hear other men discussing when they cry. I brought the first question up to say on this question or thought process that, yeah, it might not logically make sense that people cry in stressful situations, but I would say there's a lot of folks that are dead, especially black men, because they can't process their emotions. They're not able to get themselves focused, and they make terrible afterthoughts. For instance, a girlfriend breakup, a fight at the club. I mean, we all hear stories every single day when people are dead because they couldn't process their emotions enough not to pick up a gun or not to stab someone or get in the car. What are your thoughts, T?
I think that's a great thing you just brought up, because I can even think about me specifically in my life. One instance of how that affects me for sure is like when I would, once again, never discussing emotional intelligence, which to me is basically the act of expressing your emotions or being able to communicate your emotions. I think throughout most of my life, and I'm 47 years old, probably the first 40 years of my life, when I had an issue with a woman and she did something I didn't like, I started seeing another woman. Instead of being able to say, hey, I don't appreciate the way this is going, and you know, if I need this to be changed, and if you can't change this, maybe you're not for me. I just said, hey, I don't like what she's doing. Later for that, and I'm gonna do my own thing. And fortunately, we've gotten out of the vein of just crying, because not having the emotional intelligence is so much deeper. Thank you for the question, Lamont. It's so much deeper than not crying. I think also the same way it's a microcosm for the same way we were taught about how not crying as kids. That just basically shows we also weren't taught how to communicate our emotions by most of the men that we grew up looking up to. They didn't know how to express their emotions, especially in that age range. You know, men who probably was born, and there's probably lots of reasons for that. Almost all the things that African Americans go through. First of all, once we have to own that we're going through that. Let's say men that might have was born in the 30s, 40s, 50s, they were terrible or unable to express their emotions. We got to own that first, and then there probably is a reason. A lot of reasons, you know, throughout our history in this country, there probably is a reason for that. But the fact that we never even discuss those things, talk about those things, address those things, by the grace of God, I think we're the first generation. Fred has a child. I think Al has children. We're the first generation, I think, to try to do a deep dive within ourselves and maybe try to figure out, hey, I'm going to do this thing a little bit different with my offspring. And that might mean different things to all of us, but I do believe in having friends and acquaintances and talking to them. I think we're the first ones to realize that there's something more there than just don't cry and just not talking about stuff and not expressing yourself. That didn't work out for me very well in my life, in my relationships with women, in my relationship with myself. Not being able to express myself, it wasn't good. So, absolutely.
Hey T, and to that point, and Mama, when you start watching this, you can stop. You can turn the sound down right now, because I'm sure I'm not the only one that was told to stop crying in the middle of a whooping.
Yeah.
Like that makes sense.
Yeah, you know, and so you kind of develop that, like you kind of taught to be like, no, whatever it is you feeling, you're not allowed to express it. And what we learn later in life is that it's coming out one way or the other. Now one person might get the whole thing, but it's gonna come out one way or the other.
what we still have to do is we still have to teach these young men and women to control those emotions, though.
Yeah.
Because I can allow you to express your emotions all you want to, but if you cannot control those emotions, that expression of your emotions can take you overboard. A lot of our shootings happen because these young men can't control their emotions. Yes, they're able to cry. Yes, they're able to express themselves more than we are, but there's nobody there that's teaching them to control those emotions also. And emotional intelligence, exactly what you're saying. If they don't have the emotional intelligence to know that, hey, yeah, I took this loss, I took this L, yeah, this person talking junk about me on Facebook, but I shouldn't do anything about it. Maybe go to Sunset Park back there in that little place back there where we used to fight, and do that little one-on-one thing. But that ain't what they do now. They want to go out there, they want to shoot somebody. They want to hurt somebody. We got a young man right now who got stabbed multiple times and is in really serious condition up in Charlotte.
I saw that. That's sad.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. These and you would think you hearing about it, that these kids come from these bad families. No, this kid didn't come from bad families. This is just an emotional reaction to a situation, and now a person could maybe die, and another person could maybe die in prison. And that's what T was saying about the emotional but I forgot what you said, man.
Emotional intelligence.
Emotional intelligence. We have to. Okay, yeah, it's okay to cry. It's okay to express your emotion, but you have to control it. There's got to be a time and place where you can express yourself, and you can't get to the point where you're so angry or you're so emotional or you're so riled up that you're going to go out and you're going to hurt somebody. Because not only are you going to hurt somebody, you're going to hurt yourself and you're going to hurt your own family, because you're going to be the one in jail.
Fred, I asked you the same thing. I know everyone thought it was crazy when I was saying, hey, if you're crying and someone's breaking in the house, I know the answer. Most people are going to say, nah, that doesn't make sense. But that's the reason so many people in jail or dead or have altered their life severely, because they haven't been able to process emotional stress, especially men, because your main thing is going to go back to your physical dominance or your ability to shoot or run or do whatever. What are your thoughts?
When I was in college, I went to John C. Smith. And so my nephew's dad told me, he took me down to the store. He said, when you come down here, make sure you don't come by yourself. He said, if you do come by yourself, get what you need and get back. But he knew most of everybody down there by that store. So when I went down there, nobody said nothing to me. They didn't bother me. I got my stuff and went back. So I went, me and this guy went one day. And I told him, I said, man, you might want to take that jewelry off. Nah, man, I'm going to keep my stuff on. I told him again, man, you might want to take your stuff off. You got to realize where you at. Nah, ain't nobody going to mess with me. All right, cool, you grown. So we got to the store, and the guy looked at him and said, man, give me your stuff. He told him no. He said, give me your stuff. He said no, and pushed the guy and ran, and the guy shot him.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sitting there froze like, what's going on? And so the guy looked at me and left. And so he shot the guy, but he shot him in the hand. The guy got up, and he walked the campus bleeding, and I'm still frozen. I didn't know what to do. And so I goes back to campus, my chest beating hard. I'm trying to figure out what's going on, but I got to the room, I just started crying.
Mm-hmm.
So I called my partner, I told him what happened. And, we talked for a while. He said, man, somebody was just sitting chill, get over it. But if I just sit there, I started thinking now, how about if I just got mad and said, hey, you shot my man, I got to get you.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times, that's what we think. Like, okay, you shot somebody I know, now we got to retaliate instead of you processing what's going on. Yeah. So that's, and like T said, sometimes with your emotions, you ain't got to always cry, but you still got to process. You got to take time to process, what's going on. And I remember my grandma died on my mom's side, and I was 7. They said she died. I was like, oh, okay, grandma's sick. Grandma come back. I'll see grandma tomorrow. It didn't process to me that grandma had died until I got to the funeral. And at the funeral, I started crying. I didn't cry in the open because, like you said, hey, don't cry. I ran to my mama, buried my head in her chest, and cried just because I didn't want nobody to see me cry. But now, my grandma, my dad's side, I never met her. All I seen in this picture, never met her. But every Mother's Day, I think about it and start crying.
Mm.
Because they say I always think like, man, what if y'all you start thinking, what if I'd have met him? What if I'd have seen him? What if should have seen me graduate? What if this, what if that? And it just all hit me because I never seen it. I really just saw a picture of it about 2 years ago. Because I think my dad in his 70s, they didn't have, you couldn't, if he did have a picture of my grandma, it was so tore up, messed up, you probably couldn't make it out. So what I'm saying is a lot of times we don't express those emotions. We want to hold it in because we want to be hard and tough. So when something really happens and you try to express it, you go blow up. So just like my cousin said, when he was in that situation, if he would have said, okay, oh my God, what's going to happen? Still behind the car, quivering and crying, you never know what happened. But he had to process what's going on and do what he had to do. Then after it was all over, then it was time to let it all out. So sometimes we just got to process before we start crying.
Yeah. And man, and two, we talk about like a lot of these young people. I believe they under way more pressure than we were when we was coming up. We don't talk about PTSD. Like when I was coming up, I might have knew 2 people who got shot. And like they know like mountains of people who not just been shot, who've been killed, people who done killings. And what do you do with that? And then 2, like when we was growing up, if you got beat up, and maybe everybody on the bus knew about it or saw it, everybody in your neighborhood might have talked about it. But now they got these phones. You on Facebook, you on Instagram, you on YouTube. They passing the video around school. Everybody get to see you getting beat up. You're not gonna want to get beat up. And you're gonna be willing to do whatever it takes not to let that happen, unfortunately. So I don't really look at this too much as like these young people are so much different than us or they worse than us. I just think that the environment is different that they growing up in, and unfortunately, a lot of us, maybe some of us, would handle things the exact same way.
And I think we should put this in 2 different categories too. Like Al said, and I think Fred said too. I do think, obviously, there's a life and death scenario where, a fight or somebody pull out a knife or so a high intense situation. What do you do? That's one category. And I think I was speaking to a category that I think affects us more day to day. Is being just basic stuff that happens to you in relationships with people. Yeah. Nobody's going to stab nobody. Nobody's going to get shot. Nobody's going to die. Just something is going on you don't like at a coworker, somebody you're dating, your cousin, your sibling, and you not knowing how to express that. And I think we all got good points, but I think those are 2 different categories.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Yeah, absolutely.
I agree. I think the difference sometimes I see, we take simple situations and then they become life or death. It's a pastor in Gastonia. He was pulled over for a DUI a couple days ago, and this was on the news. Well, that situation turned into him pulling out a gun and doing a standoff. Like one bad decision, driving while drunk, became 5 different other things because he couldn't process his emotions in a manner that just say, hey, I'm going to get a DUI. I'm a pastor. It is what it is. And it turned into now I'm pulling out a gun. Now I'm doing a standoff. Like, and that's what Everett is talking about. Like fighting. Al was talking about fighting. That used to be simple. You fought, it was over. But now, if that video circulates the rest of your life about getting beat up, it ain't a simple decision anymore. So you got to be able to process that.
Yeah, because you think about it, be honest with you, we still talk about some of these legendary fights and somebody got knocked out, somebody went to sleep, somebody, got scared and started crying or ran home. Like this stuff from 40 years ago, people are still bringing up like it just happened. You think about it, they had a video.
But Lamont, I still think that pastor, he did make a decision to go in that other category. Mm-hmm. But I do think that it's important that we do narrow in on.
Yes.
All of us got friends that never be involved in a shooting. They didn't shoot at a cop. They didn't. Just more basic day-to-day life things people can't express themselves.
I agree.
Right. 100%.
As we get ready to wrap up, a true mark for me of a good show is when time flies by and you don't even notice that we've been talking,
Right.
and it's a general conversation. And I want to thank everyone for commenting in the show, because I know men talking about their feelings ain't the most sexiest topic. It's just not. And people, even women, I think, get squirmish when men are talking about how they feel. And that's something culturally, society, we need to get over a little bit. Because a man needs a safe place somewhere, a safe space that he can let his guard down, that he can express his true feelings without being judged. And I think all of us on this panel can agree to that. In our wrap up, I am curious, and I'm gonna start off with you, Fred, but I want to hear your wrap up, any recommendations you give about masculinity or being a man, but also because everybody keep mentioning a time and a place. I'm just curious, where is this place at that we keep mentioning? Because I ain't feeling the scenarios where, because for every scenario somebody names, I can tell you most people gonna think that's unacceptable for a man to cry in it. Fred, what are your thoughts as you wrap up?
It was a good show. I'm gonna go back to when me and Mark was younger. He might not want me to tell the story, but we was outside. It was me, him, and another guy. I ain't gonna mention another guy's name. And the guy brought the Bible up, and so Mark pulled the Bible. Mark went home and got a Bible, and hurt the man's feelings. And he ran home crying to his mom. And his mom had to come out with the Bible, and we was outside by the hour discussing the Bible. Why did that man home crying?
Why did he cry?
Because he couldn't. I don't think he couldn't. He said something about the Bible. He couldn't explain or kind of out what Mike was saying. I think Mike know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I know the story, and but my mama watching too tonight. After this long discussion, I told him he was giving his money to the white man, and that just took it south. Wow. And I was young, and you didn't know, and I was young, so y'all forgive me. I need to talk to him and ask for forgiveness. So my mom, them hearing this, I'm sorry. I know they don't know what I'm talking about, but I'm sure my mom will ask me. I'm like Everett, Mom, just close your ears. You ain't hear that.
Don't listen to that part. Yeah.
But Fred, where is a safe place?
That's hard. Because a lot of times we say it was a safe place, so let me call this person and talk to them and vent and get it out. And that's thing you know, somebody else calling you and ask you questions. So is it really a safe place? So what we have to do is we have to find that safe place. You have to find that person you can call and confide in and talk to them. Because the worst thing you want to do is hold it in. And when it comes to our kids, we can't raise our kids the same way we was raised when we was younger. We got to let our kids know it's okay to express yourself. It's okay to cry. It's okay to be mad. It's okay to have a tender travel to a certain degree. But we can't let it go overboard either. Like me and T said, hey, you can't be sitting there crying because you can't get no apple juice. You can't be crying because you can't get on that tablet no more or go outside. It's a different way you got to express yourself, and that's where we come in at, is teach them that different way to express themselves. But as far as a safe place, each individual person has to find their own safe place. I know right now, if I got an issue going on, I can call Mike and I ain't got to worry about hearing it in the streets. I can call my dad and talk to him. I ain't got to worry about hearing it in the streets. So we got to find that person that we can talk to, that we can express ourselves and get it off our chest. So I guarantee once you get off your chest, I guarantee you'll be all right.
T, any final thoughts? Safe place?
I heard Al and Fred mentioned this on this call this evening. Fred mentioned that people he might have dated before not, but with his wife, he knows that would be okay now. I think that's a great place to start, with your better half. And like I said, if I date somebody now, I'm communicating those things, that it's important to me to be able to express myself. And it's not even centered around crying. That's important. I think you receive what you're seeking. Al mentioned the unfortunate incident that he was so locked in, but as soon as he heard that person's voice, he let it all. All his humanity came out. So those are two examples I think that show you right there. It's a great start, and not saying that has to be the only one or everybody has to do it that way, but that's a great start with your better half. I was so in tune with Fred said his grandma he never met. I had a grandma I was close to. She died in a fire when I was 12. And every time I go to her grave, which is about once or twice a year, I just burst into tears. Now, if I date a woman that's a problem for, this ain't this ain't the one. This ain't gonna work. You know, amongst other things, you know, that might happen, that I may have to express myself. And same thing with my uncle. When I go to his grave every time, I cry. You know, I think about the good moments and things of that nature. So I think a good start would be with your better half. And also with me, sometimes we just, you go in and I told you guys 10, 15 years ago, I started seeking within myself and my relationship with the Lord. And it came to me just like, I don't know, it came to me like an epiphany that all those incidents I gave you, those famous people, like, that's okay for me too. If DMS can cry for Aaliyah, if Jim Valvano can cry, if, you know, whatever, it's okay when I'm watching the Central Park 5 movie and this thing get in my soul and get in my heart, it's okay for me to cry. And it doesn't matter who that's okay with. Now, I said you start with the better half, but so I said better half will be good and within yourself, finding yourself. And I think those are good starts. Those would be two good starts for me.
Al, any final comments and safe place thoughts from your head?
Safe place would be wherever you feel safe. That's easy. Wherever you feel safe. There is no particular place. My grandmother used to go in the closet, pray. That was her safe place. I mean, safe place is wherever you feel safe. I agree with T. Start with your better half if you have a better half. If you don't, you need to find that one person that you know, like my cousin here, Fred. Talk about Lamont. He can call him and talk to him. Time and place. Time and place is the time and place where you can do it. There is no particular time after event, before an event, or during an event. Except for somebody breaking in your house and trying to kill you.
That was good. That was good.
But a time and a place is where you feel safe enough, where you can express yourself with or without the people that you feel safe expressing yourself with. But as long as you got God, as long as you can express yourself to God, you always got that one person that's going to listen to you and not judge you and guide you and comfort you. And start with God. Then work on your wife or your husband, and then friends, and then family. But the biggest thing about it is don't hold this stuff in, because as a person who has been through this, I'm telling you, and anybody listening who has not been through this, when that stress gets to the point where you can't find a way out, when that your emotions get so deep where you can't find a way out, you're going to find a way out, and it's going to be death.
And Everett, final comments, safe place?
Yeah, man, I was sitting here thinking, like, man, like what Al says, like wherever you feel safe at, you know, like even, but you need a safe place. And even Superman had the Fortress of Solitude. You know, he had a place where he can go to, where he can just be a regular person. He didn't have to be Superman over there. He can, you know, reconnect with himself, with his identity, and just be who he really was with himself. And you know, if you don't have that, like, and you Superman all the time, like I guess that's why we die younger than women. I don't know. Like we walk around carrying stuff that we don't need to carry. I mean, there's a lot of great points here. I don't think I could add anything else to it. You know, I really appreciated the conversation. Just so many great comments. And then just one thing off topic, you know, I saw one of my former coworkers on here, Miss Hinton, somebody I ain't seen in 30 years, man. One of the sweetest ladies you ever want to meet. And I almost got choked up just seeing her, you know, comment on here, man. Just go ahead.
Hey, we made progress, man. Everett expressed himself, man.
I almost got choked up.
Rita, thank you for following us all the way through the show. And you're absolutely right. And I sent some of the statistics to the men in the background. No matter what the age group is, men die twice the rate as women do in age categories. It is sad. But some of it is lifestyle choices. Some of it is making poor decisions, processing information and processing situations and making them worse. I want to thank everyone for watching and joining us tonight. I hope I was able to do Marlon proud with this show because this wasn't my topic, but this is one that he wanted to do. And Marlon does a great job on these types of shows. So I hope I did him justice, and for Marlon to get well soon. I want to thank all of our guests tonight because, man, I mean, talking about emotions and emotional intelligence and crying, it probably ain't the easiest conversation to have every day. But I hope as we get older, we understand the flaws and not talking about it and not expressing ourselves. If you like this conversation, we're going to continue this conversation at Union Baptist Church on February the 17th. And Al is going to be one of our panelists that I've locked in tonight. And we're going to keep talking about men and their emotions in 2024. We just need to have more conversations. And so you'll start to see the flyers come out this week. You'll start to see more conversations around the program we have. T, I hope you can come. Fred, I hope you can come. Because, man, I don't know. Sometimes I feel men are in a corner by themselves at times when it comes to talking about emotions and talking about the state of manhood in 2024. Al alluded to some stuff about this generation is a little different from the previous generation we grew in. And I'm sure our parents think we're a little softer than they were, so it's a revolving door. But I do want to thank everyone for watching and joining and taking part in this conversation. We don't have enough of these. And if you probably see a theme with higher definition, probably over the last 6 months to a year, where we're talking more about feelings, and we're having psychologists on, we're having medical professionals on, because these are real deal things on your everyday life, things that affect your job, your health, your church life. Because the next thing we'll holler is church hurt. Somebody done hurt our feelings, and we ain't going back up in there because we can't process what happened. So thank you again. Thank you really from the bottom of my heart for the show. Have a blessed and safe week. We will not have a show on the Super Bowl week. So whoever your team is, I hope they won. And if you're a Dallas Cowboy fan, they been out, so you ain't got to worry about that. But other than that, have a safe and blessed week.
I thank Lamont Ratchford. We had a whole show and he did not offend anybody.
Something
might be a
made
first.
crowd with the Bible.
I almost did. I had to bring myself back.
Well, Fred brought up a story where he offended somebody 40 years ago. but not tonight. Not tonight. We'll take that.
Let me say one thing. I had a coworker that passed away. He got diagnosed with cancer in July. He was dead by October. Oh, wow. And it's been emotional at my place of employment. Very emotional. A 20-year company person. And during this week, they had a tribute video that they showed over his 20 years. They had footage and video with him talking. Man, it's tough, right? We I know we work with people and we think we don't have those personal connections. He's been to my house. He was in my house in June. So to have someone like that pass away is tough. And I say that to say this: people are leaving here. It's not only the old, but it's the young. So please get right. Please find yourself a faith-based church where you can serve, be a part of a church body that's feeding you, and that your spirit is right, your soul is right, and that you make it to the other side and where you want to go, not where you've lived your life and destruction and hell that you've raised on earth. So with that, I'll say, please be blessed. Have a safe week. We look forward to seeing you in a few weeks. Tia will have her show the week after the Super Bowl. Thank you.
God bless you. Good night.